There are many takeaways for 49ers fans as they look at the playoffs and how everything has gone down. And I think 49er fans are looking around and they're seeing, hmm, there's a lot of things that we can take away from these postseason games and where the 49ers ultimately finished this season. When you look at Rams versus Eagles, Commanders versus Lions, Ravens, Bills, Texans, Chiefs, obviously the 49ers would be sectioned in the NFC bracket. But when you look across the board, even in some of these games where you have Ravens, Bills, Texans, Lions in the AFC, I think one of the things that we can look across the board and see is that quarterback play hasn't been like that great. Now, it's been great for a few. Jaden Daniels looked absolutely phenomenal. Josh Allen is legendary. I mean, he's playing so well. Lamar Jackson had some early struggles, but he was able to bounce back and put his team in a position to win the game. But you had a dropped catch by Mark Andrews on a 2-point conversion that cost them a chance at tying the game and ultimately winning that game. And also, too, you look at, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, etc. And I think when you look at Jalen Hurts and Matthew Stafford, and even go back to the further rounds, I think when you look at the quarterback play and then you look back to last year and you think of how Brock Purdy played in that game against the Green Bay Packers and the NFC Championship game against the Lions, Brock played pretty well. And I think we've seen some inconsistent play throughout the postseason, which is to be expected because I think it's important to remember that playing the quarterback position is difficult and it's challenging. And I think when we look back and we see the inconsistencies throughout the playoffs, I think it gives a greater appreciation to Brock Purdy and what the San Francisco 49ers have been able to do in recent years. And just again, kind of exemplifies how difficult it is to continue to be in the tournament and make it to NFC championship games and to make it to the Super Bowl. Yes, the ultimate prize is winning it, and that is the goal. That's the reason why they play the game. But it is also a very, very difficult task to do so. So when I kind of look around and I kind of see the way Jared Goff played in that game against the Commanders, and you kind of look at Jalen Hurts, and yeah, I get it was a snow game and things like that. I just feel like there's a lot of room for Brock Purdy, who has just turned 25 not too long ago, to improve and be even better. And I think when you look at this last season, we knew that the 49ers had an opportunity to be in the playoffs, but, a combination of injuries, emotional letdown from the offseason, and just poor execution in a lot of different areas, offense, defense, and special teams. That is the reason why they weren't in the dance. But I think if we saw, I really don't think the 49ers are that far off. It's basically what I'm trying to say is I really do think I look around and I look at how the teams played and in these games, and it's like, man, the 49ers really weren't that far away. They just needed to get out of their own way. That was, I think, the biggest issue with the 49ers this year was injuries and self-inflicted wounds. And if they could have just stayed out of, like I said, their way, they're winning divisional games against Arizona, Rams, and Seahawks, and they probably win the West, and they're probably kind of trending into a better place into the playoffs. As we heard, there was a potential chance of Hargrave returning in the playoffs, Christian McCaffrey returning in the playoffs. So you could have got guys back, and who knows? Who knows what would have happened? Now we understand what it is. It didn't happen, and they missed the playoffs. But I think one of the biggest takeaways is that even with probably the year from hell for the San Francisco 49ers, you can still see how they kind of stack up against some of these teams, at least in the NFC. The NFC feels wide open. I mean, there's a good chance that a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels can beat the Eagles and move into the Super Bowl and be the first rookie to start a Super Bowl and potentially win it. And now I would say the AFC is a little bit more daunting right now because of the way the quarterbacks stack up. But the NFC feels like it could have been had. It feels like and credit to the Rams. The Rams really had a good year for the most part. Obviously didn't go well against the Eagles as they lost that game, but you got to tip their cap. They played well. But the 49ers could have beat them in both games. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. And we talked about that. That was kind of like the theme of this year. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. 49ers. That's who they were. That was their identity this year. So I think the optimism that I am taking away from watching this postseason and watching these teams and how they're executing and understanding, for the most part, what pieces we can guarantee are coming back to the San Francisco 49ers with the ability to build in free agencies, re-sign some key pieces, and potentially hit a couple home runs in the draft while picking at 11 and getting a break. Like, let's be honest. I know you, as a 49er fan, sitting at home without the emotional baggage. Yes, we want to be in the playoffs. We want to have a rooting interest, and we want to this is where we want to be every single year. But there's a little part of you that's like, man, this is nice. Not having to stress at all, not having to worry about, is my team going to win? Are they going to lose? Again, we want them to be here. I want them to be here. But I can also take a step back and rationalize that, like, hey, we've been on this road for a couple years now, since 2021, with deep playoff runs. It's kind of nice to take a step back and just kind of watch everything play out. And for me personally, it's kind of re-energizing me. It's kind of getting me into a mindset of like, man, the NFC is still wide open. The NFC can still be had, and the 49ers, with the easiest schedule, being projected right now for next year, and being higher up in the waiver wire, you know, getting the 11th overall draft pick, and having some money to spend potentially in free agency, the 49ers could be right back at it here really, really soon. So that's kind of what my big takeaway is that, man, yes, could they have made the playoffs this year? I think they could have. I think they had the talent. I just think that, like all the things that we mentioned, there's just it was a firestorm of just weird circumstances all across the season, and it is what it is. But you can see when I watch film and I break it down, you can see the where improvements can be had. It's not like things that can't be improved. That's the thing, is like you can improve a lot of the areas where they struggled in. And if they can get a Robert Saleh at defensive coordinator, and they can really kind of bring that energy back. And I really think that's what it comes down to, is just rejuvenating themselves and becoming motivated again. And because if you and I are feeling this, of sitting back watching the playoffs, like, man, we could probably beat a couple of these teams with the state of the team this year. And who knows how far they would have gotten if they got into the dance. But there's like a little piece of me that's like, man, they probably could have beat some of these teams. I mean, I think if they saw the Lions again, and they might be able to get them. But again, at the end of the day, as we look forward to the 2025 season, I think there's a lot of opportunities ahead. I think there's a lot of room for optimism. And I think that the 49ers aren't that far away. Yes, it was a down year and we expected a lot from them. But I think that with some time away, the ability to have a full offseason for the first time since 2021, they're going to be able to look back and just really be able to tack this off season, be able to have the time off that they need, and be where they need to be. And I'm excited about that. I really am. I'm excited about the future, what that holds. Hopefully getting guys like Brandon Ayuk back, the guys that have been injured, like Christian McCaffrey that we've talked about, some retooled offensive line, hopefully improving the offensive line, and things of that nature. And Brock Purdy having his first really truly adversity filled season. I think he can learn a lot from that, and I think he can come back better. And Brock, to me, strikes me as the guy, as a guy who learns from his mistakes and learns from adversity and is able to use these things to be able to build on top of them. I don't Brock doesn't strike me as someone who just kind of folds under pressure and adversity. Now, maybe under certain circumstances, he didn't execute to the highest level, but I do think that he can build upon that and he can take that experience and continue to be more efficient, be more effective, close out late games, and take care of the football. We know he's capable. We know he's good, and I think that's also one of the biggest takeaways too, is that playing quarterback is hard in this league. And the 49ers have a really good quarterback. And all we've seen from these playoff quarterbacks is we've seen a lot of guys where the lights are too big. And we've seen a young Brock Purdy, a rookie Brock Purdy, where the lights weren't too big, a second year player where the lights weren't too big. And then this year, just a lot of dysfunction. Let's call it what it is. And that was across the board, team wide. Things that they could control, things that they couldn't control. So when I look at this and I look at the whole thing and really try to project out next year, it is really hard for me. And now, admittedly, I'm an optimistic 49er fan. I tend to look as a glass half full kind of a guy. But even if you try to look at the glass half empty and you just try to look at all the different variables and ranges of outcomes, it just really feels like the 49ers are going to be in a position to make a lot of plays next season and be back at the top of the NFC. It really, really does feel like that. And I don't know how you guys feel about watching the whole playoffs and everything, but I kind of want to get your sense of how you feel. This is just kind of me just running off the top of my head. I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe from where